In this session, we will mainly cover the duties and powers of the arbitrator, the conduct and the termination of the arbitration proceedings. All of these come under sections 18 to 27 of the Arbitration Act. I will also touch upon the application of the Limitation Act to arbitration proceedings. You will notice that there will be quite a lot of overlap in the topics in this session. For example, some of the sections covering the duties will also cover the powers of the arbitrator and also the conduct of the proceedings, which is quite natural. I will also mention a lot of section numbers in this video. Don't get worried by them. If you are watching this video for a general understanding, you can safely ignore the sections or the subsections. If your intention is to just clear your exam, focus on the explanations and try to mention at least some of the important section numbers. If you are preparing for competitive exams or if you are aiming for top scores, then you need to understand the explanations first and then memorize as many section numbers as possible. Let us start with the duties of the arbitration tribunal. A quick way of summarizing the duties of the tribunal would be to say that the arbitrator should do everything that is allowed within the scope of the agreement and the scope of the Arbitration Act to settle the dispute, keeping in mind the best interest of the parties. The specific duties are mentioned under various sections of the Act. I will run through all the important sections in the next few slides. Section 14 and 15 cover the duty to withdraw from office for valid reasons, such as if the arbitrator is unable to perform his duties for any reason, such as physical difficulties or conflict of interest, then he should withdraw from his role. Section 18 talks about equal treatment of parties or being impartial, which means giving both the parties the same kind of opportunities to present their case or evidence and giving them the same kind of access to the proceedings. Section 28 talks about acting in accordance with the applicable rules and substantive laws of the country that are in force at the time of the arbitration. Section 28(3) talks about taking into account the terms of the contract and trade usages applicable to the transaction for settling the dispute. For example, in the transport or logistics sector, the working hours, the wages, the overtime and the allowances for drivers are calculated in a specific manner. So the arbitrator should take into account such norms while settling any disputes in this area. Sections 29A and B talk about adhering to the time limits set by the arbitration agreement and adhering to any applicable laws. Section 30 says the arbitrator should encourage mutual settlement through mediation, conciliation or other procedures. Since the objective is to arrive at a quick settlement, the arbitrator should encourage any valid legal or ethical way which may lead to a faster resolution. Section 31(3) says that the arbitrator should deliver a reasoned award, which means that the tribunal should provide a proper rationale or a justification for the award that is being decided. Section 34(2)(a)(4) talks about the need for the arbitrator to stay within the scope of the agreement and within the scope of the dispute that is submitted for arbitration. For example, I remember a payments related dispute in which the arbitrator was pressuring one of the parties to give up on some pending amounts, saying things like you're already so rich and this is a very small amount which should not matter to you. Well, the factors such as whether the party is rich or poor or the significance of the amount is out of scope for the resolution process. The arbitrator should just focus on the dispute, see who needs to pay what and to whom and rule on that, and not go beyond the scope of the agreement and the scope of the dispute. Section 34(2)(a)(5) says that the arbitrator must adhere to the provisions of the agreement and the act. This is quite self-explanatory, which means that the arbitrator should strictly follow the details as agreed in the arbitration agreement and also act within the powers and duties that are conferred to him under the act. Section 34(2)(b)(2) talks about the need to avoid conflict with the public policy, which essentially means that the arbitrator should take into consideration overarching public policies in India, like protecting the environment or reducing unemployment or universal access to healthcare, and ensure that the arbitration process and the arbitration award does not conflict with any public policy. Section 38 talks about the need to render accounting details to the parties on deposits and balances, which means that the arbitrator should keep an account of all the expenses of the arbitration and assign costs to the right parties. And he should also give proper accounts when the arbitration is completed or terminated. As such, you will see that all of the duties are quite self-explanatory and easy to understand. From an exam perspective, mention as many of them as you can remember, and try to use short forms or codes to remember the section numbers. Let's next look at the powers of the arbitral tribunal. The Arbitration Act gives the tribunal a wide range of powers to enable it to effectively deal with the resolution process. This is a fairly long list, but the powers are quite straightforward. I will quickly go through the complete list. The tribunal will have the power to make interim or final awards, and this is covered under various sections, which essentially means that the arbitrator will work towards the final award and also pass interim awards or measures, such as asking a party to perform a contract, make a payment, or to stop any transactions. The tribunal will have the power to take assistance under Section 6, which means that the arbitrator can bring in experts wherever required or hire administrative help within the scope of the agreement and also with the consent of the parties. The tribunal will also have the power to rule on its own jurisdiction under Section 16, which means that the tribunal can decide if it has the jurisdiction to deal with the dispute that is referred to it, and also on whether any other aspects of the process, such as asking for evidence or seeking access to confidential documents, are within the scope of its jurisdiction. The tribunal will have the power to pass interim relief under Section 17, which means that if the final award is going to take some time, the arbitrator might pass interim relief, such as part payments or access to premises or stopping of an eviction. The tribunal will have the power to determine the rules of procedure under Section 19, which means that within the scope of the agreement and the Act, the tribunal can decide on the procedure to be followed for the arbitration. The tribunal will have the power to determine the place of arbitration under Section 20, which means that the tribunal can decide on any location for the arbitration to be conducted if no specific location is mentioned in the agreement. The tribunal will have the power to determine the language of the proceedings under Section 22, which means that the proceedings may be conducted in English, in Hindi, or any other language, and the tribunal may also get the documents or the statements translated into the language of the proceedings. Next, the tribunal will have the power to request and receive the statements of claim and defense under Section 23, which means that when the arbitration is commenced, the tribunal can ask the parties to submit their statements. Under Section 24, the tribunal has the power to conduct hearings or written proceedings, which means that depending on the need, the tribunal can either conduct the proceedings verbally or they can ask for written documents and written statements to be submitted. Under Section 25, the tribunal has the power to proceed or terminate the proceedings in case of default of a party, which means that if one of the parties defaults in terms of appearing for hearings or in submitting documents as required, the arbitration can either be continued on the basis of the available information or terminated at the discretion of the tribunal. The tribunal has the power to appoint an expert under Section 26, which means that the tribunal can bring in experts like advocates or architects or chartered accountants for providing specialized opinion wherever required. The tribunal has the power to seek the court's assistance in taking evidence under Section 27, which means that if required, the tribunal can reach out to the court to help in obtaining evidence or to compel a witness to appear before their proceedings. Under section 30, the tribunal has the power to encourage a settlement through mediation or conciliation. As mentioned earlier, the tribunal can suggest any other ADR mechanism if they feel that it offers a faster resolution for the dispute. Under section 31, the tribunal has the power to decide on the form and contents of the award, which means that the arbitrator can decide on what should be the award, such as performance of the contract, payment of money, transfer of goods or property. Under sections 31 and 31A, the tribunal has the power to determine the costs of the proceedings and assign them accordingly, which means that he has to maintain records of the costs of the arbitration, assign the cost to the right parties, and submit the statement of accounts when required. Under section 32, the tribunal has the power to terminate proceedings. That is, the arbitrator can terminate the proceedings for various valid reasons, such as the inability to proceed due to physical or legal restrictions, or the impossibility of reaching a resolution, or even in case of default by any of the parties. Under section 33, the tribunal has the power to correct and interpret the award and additional award. That is, within the time limits set by the agreement and by the Act, the tribunal can make any corrections to the awards or additional awards, such as calculation errors or valuation errors. Under section 38, the tribunal has the power to impose interest and deposits. That is, the tribunal can ask the parties to make deposits towards the cost of arbitration and even levy interest in case of delayed payments. And finally, the tribunal has the power of lien on the arbitral award and on the deposits so as to recover their costs. This power is conferred under section 39, which means that the tribunal can extend a lien on the arbitral awards or the deposits made by the parties to recover the costs of arbitration. Let us now talk about the conduct of the arbitration proceedings. The conduct of the proceedings are mostly covered under sections 18 to 27 of the Act, which also covers many of the duties and powers of the tribunal. The first step is, of course, to confirm the existence of an arbitration clause in the original agreement or as a standalone arbitration agreement, as under section 7 of the Act. Even if there is no prior agreement, in the PAG Raju versus PVG Raju case of the year 2000, the Supreme Court held that if one of the parties to the dispute requests the court for arbitration and the other party does not object to it, then the court can refer the dispute for arbitration. Once the sole arbitrator or the odd number of arbitrators for the tribunal are decided as per the agreement, the proceedings can commence. Let us go a little deeper into each of the important sections that cover the conduct of the arbitration proceedings. Section 18 talks about equal treatment of the parties, which says that the tribunal should ensure both the parties get an equal opportunity to present their side of the issue, and impartiality should be maintained in all aspects of the proceedings. Section 19 talks about the determination of rules of procedure. By default, the parties are free to mutually agree on the procedures to be followed for the proceedings, or the tribunal can decide on the procedure within the scope of the original agreement. The tribunal can also decide on the admissibility, the relevance, materiality, and weight of any evidence. If the parties mutually agree, they may even follow the framework of the Civil Procedure Code or the Evidence Act, which otherwise do not apply to arbitration proceedings by default. Section 20 talks about the place of arbitration. The place of arbitration can be decided beforehand by the parties, or the tribunal can do so. The tribunal can meet at any place as appropriate for consultation among its members, for hearing witnesses, experts, or the parties, and also for inspection of any documents, goods, or other properties. Section 21 talks about the commencement of the arbitration proceedings. Before the commencement of the proceedings, the party which is seeking arbitration must notify the other party. This is mandatory under Section 21 of the Act. Section 22 talks about the language of the arbitration proceedings. As such, the language of the proceedings and the award can be decided beforehand by the parties, failing which the tribunal can do so. This includes the language for any oral hearings and documentary evidence. The tribunal can also order translations of any submissions if they are in a different language. Section 23 talks about the statements of claim and defense. Within 6 months of the arbitrators being appointed, the statements of claim and defense must be submitted as per the agreed procedure. However, the parties or the arbitrators may decide on a shorter window for the statements. The statements may also be accompanied by relevant evidences or other documents. Section 24 talks about hearings and written proceedings. It says that unless decided by the parties, the tribunal may decide whether to conduct oral hearings or written proceedings. This section does provide that the tribunal should conduct oral hearings wherever possible and not have undue adjournments. Whether it is oral or written hearings, the parties should get sufficient advance notice and the opportunity to inspect any relevant documents or properties, and they should also get access or a copy of all the submissions made by the other party, and also any evidence provided by any experts. Section 25 talks about default of a party. Unless agreed between the parties, if either of the parties defaults on appearing at the hearings or in submitting their statements, or otherwise does not respond to the tribunal's request, and there is no sufficient cause, the tribunal will proceed with whatever details that they have on hand and even reach an award. Section 26 talks about experts being appointed by arbitration tribunals. It says that unless otherwise agreed by the parties, the tribunal may involve experts to deliver oral or written reports on specific issues. And the parties will need to provide access and documents to the expert as required for his work. And the parties will also have full access to whatever details are being submitted by the expert. As such, if the arbitrator needs to involve a third party in the proceedings for any reasons, be it for getting information or as a consultant or an expert, the parties should be notified in advance. Section 27 talks about the court's assistance in taking evidence. The tribunal or the parties, with the approval of the tribunal, may apply to the court for assistance in taking evidence. This may be in connection with any witnesses or expert witnesses, or for seeking any documents or access to inspect any goods or property. These sections 18 to 27 are quite important and quite simple. If you have any specific questions, you can post them in the comments below. Otherwise, I again strongly recommend that you should read through the Bayer Act at least once and get a sense of how these specific sections are written. Next, let us talk about the application of the Limitation Act to arbitration. Under Section 43, the Limitation Act applies to arbitration proceedings just like it applies to filing of civil suits, which means that the arbitration proceedings should commence within 3 years from the date on which the cause of action or the reason for the dispute has occurred. Otherwise, the arbitration becomes time barred. And finally, let us talk about the termination of the arbitral proceedings. The arbitration process can be terminated under the provisions of Section 32 of the Act, which essentially says that the termination can be because the final award has been reached, or the party who has moved for arbitration has withdrawn the claim and the defending party has accepted it, or the parties have mutually agreed to terminate the proceedings, or the tribunal has decided that the arbitration has become impossible or unnecessary. As I have explained earlier, the Arbitration Act gives significant flexibility to the parties in settling their dispute. And as you must have noticed, almost every part of the process, right from the start to end, can be mutually decided between the parties on most aspects, or the tribunal may decide it within the framework of the original agreement. We will conclude this video here, and I will see you again in the next session. If you have any questions or feedback, you can post them in the comments below. And please do like, subscribe and share this video.